Hey guys, so today I'm going to be drawing and painting a budgie. So I'm going to start by drawing his little head and then his body. So his head, I'm just going to pop on first, like a little dome shape like that. And then his body is twice the length. So the length of his head, then 1, 2, twice the length. So his body is quite narrow, just a fraction wider than his head and twice the length of his head. Okay, and then his tail is also twice the length. So it's his head, 1, 2, is the length of his tail. And his tail's going down behind a stick, so I'll just draw that in like that. And he's got a split tail, split feathers, so that's cool. It's going to be fun to try and draw. And then I'm going to just draw on the wing feathers roughly. And his wings come right down behind that stick as well. And on this side, I can just see his other wing going there. So I'm going to draw the log or the stick that the perch that he's sitting on across there. And it's quite a thick perch, actually. It's quite a thick perch. So I'll draw that in. And then I can erase these little lines that I don't want in amongst that stick or his perch. And I can see a couple of little claws. So I'll draw his little claws on. I can see 2 claws at the front there. So I'll pop those 2 claws in, and then I can see another 2 claws over here. So I'll draw those 2 claws in. Like that. Okay, now I can start with the detail. So he's got a little crest shape on his head. He's got a little crest shape coming around his face. And up near the top of his head, he's sort of got a dome shape there. So I'm just drawing that sort of circle around there to help me guide that. And then his beak, he's got his nostrils up there. And his beak comes down and around and meets that little point in his little chest crest. Just there like that. Then you can see there's a little diamond-shaped eye over here. I can't see the other eye. This picture I got off Unsplash, royalty-free reference site. Now you can see I've got to make his head a little bit wider. I've got to make him a little fraction wider. So I can just take the whole body out of fraction. Get my eraser and just erase that inside line like that. And I can pop in, I'll paint the lines in, I won't draw the lines in. He's got a stripe that comes down his chest there, like I'll drop these lines as well, a fraction. Make his head crest a little bit longer, the pattern on his feathers a bit lower down like that. I can come down like that, there we go. And I can just see the other blue pattern on that side. The very edge of his eye maybe, I'll just draw that like that. And then he's got a few little patterns coming down here, and he's predominantly a green little bird. So he's green and yellow. So I'm just going to draw the bits that are going to be green. Or these are dark blue, these wing patterns. So I'll draw those in first. They're just little U shapes. Those are just little U shapes. So they're nice and easy to draw. And I'll paint over these. I'm going to use my core watercolours today. They're a lovely, vibrant watercolours. And budgies are lovely, vibrant little birds. So I thought that would be a good one. I used them yesterday and I really enjoyed it. So I thought I'll use them again today. So I'm going to start with a yellow colour, and then I'm going to add the darker tone on top for the wing feathers. Now on his tail, he's actually got a few little feathers underneath. So there's a feather, that's his actual tail part. And then he's got like 5 feathers that come down in little 1, 2, 3 like layers, because when they fly their little tails fan out and they're quite beautiful. We get these wild here. I'm going to lengthen that tail a fraction just because I think I need to. There we go, like that. So that's the bird pretty much drawn in. So I'm going to go straight in with Handsy Yellow. It's a lovely light yellow, and I'm going to pop that onto his head. I'm just going to pop that in there like that. I might give him background to create some contrast, just a wash of probably indigo. I love indigo. especially in the core watercolours. The indigo's divine. So I might give him an indigo background. So I'll just pop that in there like that. I can colour in the whole thing. I don't need to leave any white on there because the darker parts, these bits are blue. So they're going to cover completely. So that's fine. Now, same for his wings. The base colour is going to be yellow. So I'm going to paint that in. And I'm going to cover the whole wing. Down here on this side, I'll cover the top of that. And you can see just in between these tail feathers at the bottom and up the top is a little bit of that yellow. So pop that in and that'll do. Like that. So now I am going to go make a green up. So I'm going to use the same blue. So I'm going to use cobalt teal and see if I can make that light green. Clean my brush, get the cobalt teal on my palette, mix it with the yellow, and that makes that lovely vibrant green. And I'm going to take that down his front of his little body. That yellow's still a little bit damp, but it'll blend. I'll be able to blend it out, so that won't matter. You won't even notice it. Cut around his little toes, like that. Come down and fill in his whole body. I'll add a couple of layers. I'll add some shadows and a little bit of darker tone and sort of make it a little bit mottled in the middle. You can see he's got a little bit of a mottled pattern on him. So, okay, I'm going to make a slightly darker green, so more blue, less yellow. So it's cobalt teal in the core colours, a little bit less yellow. And while that's still damp, I'm going to come up and fill in these darker areas, because while it's still damp, it'll blend itself, which is always what we want. It's nice to, that's what watercolour does. It's really lovely, and it helps you by blending itself if you work damp in damp. Wet in wet even more so. It'll flow like rain. It's just amazing. It's beautiful when it's wet in wet. I'm also going to darken up, just coming down here. And then he's got blues, so I'm not going to worry so much about that. His wings up the top are just about dry. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to get my indigo, which is my favourite core colour. And I'm going to just fill in these little U shapes with the very, very tip of my brush, just to get those little dark patterns in that are on the feathers, like that. And then I've got to be a bit careful near his belly. I've got to do the insides of these ones. I've got to leave little gaps of the yellow showing through, and just draw down these lines of these wing feathers like that. And the same on this side. He's got, I can see a shadowy blue colour under there. And then under his tail feathers, he's got blue feathers there. And he's got paler blue there. So I'll just add a little bit, leaving the yellow still visible around the edges, like that. Just like that. Okay, quite happy. And I'll go around the outside edge of those two little feathers there. Right, I'm also going to use the indigo for his eyes. And that's the indigo I've got there on that bit of paper, on that palette. So I'll use that, just utilise that. So I can go back up into his little head now. Got a bit of a hair on the end of my brush, so I'll get rid of that because I don't want any stray brush marks. And I'm going to leave the tiniest little highlight on his eye, like that. I'm going to just colour that eye in completely. So now, on his little nose, the little boy birds have got a blue tip on their nose, and the little girl birds have got a pinky tone. So I'm going to add this blue in on his little nose, because he's a little boy budgie, just like that. And I'm also going to take this blue, this same lighter blue, this is cerulean blue, onto his tail a little bit. Just got the teeniest touch of it. And now I'm going to add indigo again, get my indigo back on the palette, just up here, and I've got to fill in these little dots around his little face. So he's got quite dark markings here. I can see a few little sort of random feathery markings. So pop those in. Pop the one in on this side as well. And these little dots, you can see the green sort of blended into the yellow, but I don't mind. And I'm also now going to take these lines, because he's got the little head decorations, his little feathery lines around his head, top of his head. The yellow is completely dried now, so I can add in these lovely stripes that are so synonymous with the budgies. Take a little bit around that side. I'm going to darken up the inside of his iris a little bit. I'm going to use a teeny touch of Payne's Grey in his iris, like that. Still leaving that tiny little highlight as the white of the eye. And you can see he's got quite a dark tip to his beak. So I'm going to use a touch of yellow ochre. And now I'm going to add a touch of burnt umber, or just a darker brown, any darker brown. And I'm going to add that to, actually I've got burnt umber here. Go to touch of burnt umber to the tip of his beak, just down here. Just the very tip of his beak is darker than the rest. So I'll just add that on, like that. And now I'm going to go onto the stalk, or the perch that he's sitting on. So I'm going to clean my brush, make sure there's nothing on it. And I'm just going to wet the perch. Cut around his little feet a little bit. Like that, wet the perch, and I'm going to drop in yellow ochre. Oops, get some more yellow ochre than that on my brush. Get a bit of yellow ochre and drop that in onto the stem like that while that's very wet. And that'll all meld in together. I'll get a bit of burnt umber and I'm going to put that on the bottom. This is a very simple way of painting wood and sticks. So I add the burnt umber to the bottom. Where he's sitting, I will also add, I'll make up, actually I might even add a little bit of grey, a little bit of a grey, just directly under him where he's shadowed, just there. And a little bit of that grey. I'm using Payne's Grey. I'm just using Payne's Grey because I've got it handy. And I'm going to pop a little bit of that in the very bottom of that stick, just to create that shadow texture, like that. You can see in the reference. Right. So I'm quite happy with that. So now I'm going to do a background. I'm going to have to let him dry a little bit, and I'm going to go around him completely with indigo. So I'm getting some indigo ready on my palette up in that top corner. And I'm going to carefully wash around him with indigo, just to create a nice little bit of contrast, because I love when, you know, you put a bit of a background around something, just a wash, and it really makes the picture pop. And I love that. So I was going to stay away from the stick a little bit because it's still very wet. And I don't want that blue to flow into that stick, because it will. If I touch it against the wood, it'll flow into it. So I'll just stay a fraction away until that's completely dry. So I'll continue around Budgie's head, being careful not to actually go into the Budgie's little face and head, and cut around the outside edge. Like that, and go almost to the stick because the stick's still very wet, like that. And then just keep going around. Do the same thing on the bottom. Again, staying away from the rest of him is dry, so I can go right up to the budgie itself. Just stay a little bit away from that stick until it's dry, and create these washes around. And while that's still damp, I can actually add in more indigo just to create some more interest if I want to. Just in different spots, just to make it slightly different tones around about. Come down and around the budgie's tail, cutting in as close as I can without going over it, down the bottom between the tail where it splits into two. Right, I'm going to get a little bit more darker indigo, so less water, more pigment, and add that in like that. I might just add that in onto the one side of the painting. While that's still damp, it'll flow a little bit, and just make it not so flat looking. You don't want it to look flat, you want it to look alive, have a little bit of movement in it. So pop that in like that. I can get up a bit closer to that stick now, just a fraction because it's nearly dry, like that. And up at the top here, same, get up closer to the stick. There we go. I might take it a little bit around this side. I'll just dilute it a fraction so it's not quite as thick. Like that. Take it right around there. And just make different, so it doesn't quite cover the whole background. I can come into that stick a bit now because it's dry. Come underneath this stick here. Oops. A bit more water in my mixture, like that. And then I'll run that down like that. And there we have it, peeps. That is a little budgie watercolour. So I hope you enjoyed this. It was lots of fun to do. It's a nice, simple, easy sketch for you. You've got the picture off Unsplash, and you can also get beautiful reference photos off Pixabay. It's another royalty-free reference site. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this toy tutorial. If there's anything you'd like to see, just leave a comment in the comment section below and I will draw whatever you request. That would be lots of fun. So yeah, thank you for watching. Have an awesome day and I'll see you next video. Okie doke. Bye.